2.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Mocking After Dark. I am Chris Battistel, and with me today, I have the pleasure of joining the screens with Drew Scott, what you can find at Drew3MR, Nate Markham, what you can find at Nate Markham, and Gator J, producer extraordinaire, what you can find at FantasyJ77. Jay, how's it going, man?
Dude, I am stoked. I'm ready to get this draft going. We were going to do an IDP draft.
Yeah.
That was kind of we got to do a little bit more timing better on that, but that's cool. We'll do a redraft, 1 QB, half PPR, startup. How does that sound?
I dig it.
We are full, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the start button and let you run your show, buddy.
All right. You're actually the 101.
Yeah.
I have a feeling you know who you're going to take. You like a little off-brand here and see what you can get. So what are you thinking?
Man, it's a half PPR, so it's got to be a running back here. I'm going to trust this guy. I don't have very many shares of him because of where I draft normally. I'm going to go ahead and take CMC. I don't know if that's a bad pick, especially in a half PPR. I don't play very many half PPRs, so I'll let you tell me how bad of a job I'm doing from the ones.
I mean, so far so good. He was on an absolute tear once he was traded from Carolina to San Francisco, being pretty much the RB1 through that time, a full season in that program, in that Kyle Shanahan offense. My only worry is who is going to be at quarterback. If it's Trey Lance, do you see a situation where Trey Lance takes away some of those pivotal carries?
Trey Lance, is he still play quarterback?
Who? As far as we know, it's Brock Purdy at that QB1 over there.
Don't do my man Lance like that, man.
We don't even know what he is yet. So let's hold the horses. I mean, don't get me wrong. They've got 65 people in the backfield. I mean, I think Shanahan runs the ball 12 times a game too. I don't know. But I'm still going to trust CMC. He's still the bell cow.
Yeah, I agree. We had Bijan go number 2, which is pretty high. Nate, is Bijan Robinson someone you were hoping to fall back at that 12 spot?
Oh, I mean, yeah, if he could make it to 12, I'd be thrilled. But I would also have been thrilled if CMC and Justin Jefferson were there for me at the 12,
exactly.
13 pick. I hope
first round reversal.
Yeah, exactly. I had the first pick, and you know what? In our last mock, that was the one thing that I did is I took the one, and I want to get away because, I found these later picks, especially if you play in leagues where you don't know your draft spot. What do you guys prefer? Do you prefer to know in advance, or do you like that 15-minute before Yahoo? You're pick number 7. You've been prepping for pick number 1 or 12, and now you're thrown on the clock. What would you rather have, the chaos or the calm? Chris?
I like either way. Chaos, calm, give it to me. I like to prepare for my drafts, but I do enough mock drafting where you can throw me in any spot, and I'm pretty much going to know where my strategy is going to lay. Drew, do you have a certain part that you like one over the other there? The chaos or the calm?
I'm the exact same way as you. I do so many mock drafts from so many different spots. It really doesn't matter to me anyway. But I tend to think the chaos is a little bit more fun.
Yeah. Well, that's a no-brainer. I mean, chaos is always more fun, right? It's definitely more fun. I tend to lean towards I like to have the prep, but the prep can also be too much prep, right? You can overthink it at some point.
Yeah, paralysis by analysis.
Yes,
exactly.
I think that's a lot of the issue is where we run into like the Scott Fish Bowl that's coming up, right?
Mm-hmm.
People have already gotten their invites. We already had, like Nate and I are sitting at the 4th spot. And then we get this bomb dropped on us by Scott today. Thank you, Scott, by the way, for dropping a 40-point bomb. And now I'm like, okay, maybe I should have got the 2 spot. But, I mean, so over-analysis by paralysis by over-analysis, like you just said there, Nate. Same thing that Drew asked in our personal chat this afternoon. He's like, oh, shit, should I move?
I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, sometimes the
shit, I fucked
shift.
this draft up, by the way,
Why? What happened?
because it was set to. Hang on, let me see if I can change it. I don't know if I can change it. Let's go pause. Hang on.
It's
since
on
you're-
Snake.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. It needs to be on Snake, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you want
you're good.
Okay. Never mind. Never mind. I did change that part. Never mind. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I mean,
Doing
I've
great.
never. What was the other option? Like 1 to
Linear?
12, 1 to 12. Linear.
Right, yeah. As
they
in-
even offer that?
Linear redraft.
for-
Can you
for-
imagine? God, that would suck, man. 12 would blow. Shit.
Well, I was really hoping to do that just because you were at 12.
Yeah. Hey, I'm a baller. I can make that work. I can figure it out. Navigate the streets from the streets. So, but at 12 is, like I said, this is why I like being back here, because you set that framework for the entire rest of the draft. And the simpleton in me sometimes just wants to go one running back, one receiver, make it nice and easy, give yourself the flexibility. And I think that's the way I'm going to go, kind of probably with chalk. I'm going to go with workhorse, and I'm going to go with just straight. I mean, Derrick Henry could be the RB1 at the end of the season. I think that's within the range of outcomes.
Sure.
And I want to go with, a receiver who I think is going to have that same upside. And it's the first round. We're talking about the wide receiver 5, 6, 7. I can't really go wrong. It's just a choice of offenses at this point. So I think I'll probably go with the Stephon Diggs route and be nice and safe. I saw Kelsey starting to creep towards the end and got a little excited. Then it was Jonathan Taylor and the entire. So basically in chalk there. So Drew, what are you going to do now? You already have.
Well,
Hell.
I was gonna take Stephon Diggs. Is what I was gonna do. I planned on double tapping the receiver position, but there is one other running back I still like a good amount here. That I do have. He's the last of my tier 2 running backs that are left. So I think I am also going to go the boring one receiver, one running back build here, and I'm going to grab Jacobs.
Good pick.
Yeah, I was really hoping you were going to go Pollard right there. I just knew that's the quarter or the running back you were referring to when you were bringing up all the high praises. And I was not going to bring up Jacobs because I was thinking that maybe he could get back down to that 212 area.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah.
No shot.
I got a question for you. I know Chris is coming up here shortly, so I want to send this to Drew first. You guys are more of the redraft guys than I am, being that I play more Dynasty, but in a half PPR redraft, are we looking to go and grab these running backs first? Like you went Hill. You can't deny the points, right? But you went Hill first and then Jacobs with Henry on the board when in a half point PPR.
So to be honest, half or full, it doesn't change a ton for me. Like I'm not gonna overreact based off of that. I think in the later rounds it might change a little bit, but at least here at the top of the draft, it really doesn't change my rankings very much at all.
Nate?
Yeah, I mean, if you start to dig in deep and you look at even for me, like at the running back position, the difference between half point PPR and someone like Derrick Henry, in a half point scoring, he was the RB4. In full point scoring, he's still the RB4. So, last year you can find that. And I think that's the immediate response is, oh man, that's got to hurt him. But when you have that volume, and don't get me wrong, this is a freak of nature. And I worry about that offense as a whole, but I worried about that offense last year in Tennessee. And if I really hope they stay with Tannehill. I really do. And I think that would probably give the safest floor of all that. I had a question for you guys, though, with some of the news today when the mention, especially with him going just now earlier with Tony Pollard. Jerry Jones mentioned that Zeke is candidate, of course, to come back to Dallas. And I think that was always a concern. But now that we hear it from his mouth, Chris, are you moving Tony Pollard down a little bit with speculation? If you're drafting, let's say you're drafting tomorrow and you don't know what's going to happen. Is there concern for you, or is it just me?
No, definitely some concern there, especially when I'm projecting his touchdown output. Zeke Elliott's definitely going to cut into some of that. His receiving work should stay the same. I don't project that to drop as much, but anything goal line, short yardage, any of those situations where they're going to need to pick up the least amount of yards as possible, and they just want to move the chains or they want to dive into the end zone, they're going to bring in that big body back, something that we know that Zeke Elliott can do. Just don't put him at center. That's right. Don't put him at center.
No bueno.
Does not work out so well.
I agree. Like I think you have to drop him a little bit at that point, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's anything major personally. Like I've got him at running back 10 right now. Breece Hall, Najee Harris, Joe Mixon are the next 3 names behind him. I probably would drop him. I would put Breece Hall in front of him at that point. Maybe Najee. I don't know if he falls much farther than that, honestly, even if they do bring Zeke back.
Yeah. I think it could be a good buying opportunity.
Yeah.
If panic sets in with some people, because I mean, Ellie, look where he was. I say fine last year. He was the RB8 last year, and that was, in a situation that still incorporated Zeke. Maybe not for the entirety, but Zeke played and all, but really, 2 games plus the bye, and they're both capable of putting up. I don't want that. I don't want to have 2, RB whatever 2s on my or 1 and 2 on my team, but it's
what?
Pollard.
I think I might be too low on Tony Pollard.
We just talked you into Tony Pollard.
I like him, but listening to what you just said, he was the running back 8 last year.
Now
that was with Zeke in the building.
And that's full point PPR. So let's go back to half. Wait, no, that can't. Is that right? Did this motherfucker just move up from RB8 to RB7 and half point scoring? He did. So never mind. I'm gonna go ahead and come back to my draft picks. Wow.
Yeah. So we had 3 QBs go this round: Mahomes, Hurts, and Allen. Given the mocks that you guys done and drafts that you guys have seen so far, is that pretty much average? Big surprise for you, Jay, there?
Well, yeah. I wanted to ask the question again. I'm not a huge redraft guy. I'm gonna get into plenty more redrafts this year. But the quarterbacks, especially when a 1 quarterback redraft.
Yeah.
Is this about where we should be seeing them in that 3rd round? Because I debated, taking a quarterback over Najee Harris, but I wanted to shore up that. I just think Najee is going to get the opportunity this year and going to get the share over what a Patrick Mahomes or, Jalen Hurts. And I think I can gain something there, and still get a quarterback later. But is this right where you want to see those quarterbacks going in that 3 early, mid-range 3, 3rd round? Is that about right?
Yeah, I think so. That's at least the elite guys, but I wouldn't take them there. I would rather target the positional scarcity of some of the role-playing positions like the wide receivers or the running backs, or if I can grab one of those great tight ends there in the 3rd, if they were to drop, maybe like if Andrews was to drop there where Mahomes was taken, I think I'm taking Andrews over Mahomes there. And then going later into, if I can get a Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields a bit later, I think they'll have those consistent weeks where I'd rather fill the holes in my offense. So I'd rather have a wide receiver 2 over taking a quarterback early and then having that wide receiver 3 in that spot where I can have that wide receiver 2.
So I can understand somewhat of the 5 spot there. That's Rusty Shackelford go ahead and snagging Jalen Hurts and go ahead and getting that stack.
Yep.
Right. So I guess the next question I want to ask is, in redraft compared to, comparing redraft to best ball, or anything else, is stacking a huge thing with redraft, Drew?
It's not near as important as best ball, but it's still a lot of fun though. Like whenever you got those guys on your team and they connect for a deep bomb on Sunday, it's a lot of fun, but it's not something that I'm prioritizing as much as you would in best ball, though. I don't think it's near as important.
So you like that quarterback, wide receiver, hitting that 50-yarder.
It's a lot of fun.
Like,
It
for a
is.
touchdown and getting like 16, 17, 18 points off of
Right.
Okay, I hear you.
Seeing your score shoot up like that, it's a lot of fun, but it's not something that I'm as concerned about, though.
Yeah, that Goff Wood stack when they were in LA that 1 year into the playoff, the fantasy playoff stretch, they won me a championship, just those two alone.
Now, something I will say here, with this being a start 3 wide receiver, there were a couple running backs I liked right there that I was considering, but knowing that I'm starting 3 receivers, depending on how the board falls, I do tend to prefer like an Acre or Hero RB build. And so I've got Josh Jacobs, who I still have as a top 5 running back this year. And then there were some receivers I liked on the board a lot. So I kind of pivoted there and went running back. I'll find I went receiver. I'll find my RB2 a little bit later on. Mixon was the last guy I was hoping to grab. But once again, Nate was going to draft at the front. Things were going to be just fine. And then he decided to come back here and bully me this draft, apparently. So
not a bully. It's adoration for your rankings being, I'd say, or my rankings being similar to yours, because Joe Mixon was the last of my running back tiers that at least I felt, secure with a role, or at least without a bunch of kerfuffle happening around him, because I don't know what's going on in Green Bay with Aaron Jones. I would like to believe that he has this final year, and AJ Dillon will kind of, seed carries to him like he did last year, and obviously play out. I would like to see Dalvin Cook go to a team. I don't know if that's Miami or a team where he could see the lion's share of work and not get cut into. I would like to see a J.K. Dobbins where I knew that it wasn't going to be this high-powered offense that they're going to try to run and shoot and, put more passing work with Lamar. And you can go down the list, and each one, I think for every pro any one of us could say, someone could have a con, and you may feel the same way about Joe Mixon. But fact of the matter is, top 2 or 3 offense, he's going to get his, and it's just, I had question marks around the board.
I agree.
Yeah, so earlier we talked about the Tony Pollard stuff with Zeke being there and whatnot. Jamie has a question right here about Zeke being worth, and I'm assuming this is a dynasty because it's, again, we're talking about a rookie pick, it looks like. But is Zeke worth the 310? And in my opinion, I think he is, because he's going to go somewhere and be that goal line back. Yeah. He's gonna be the guy that just gets TDs. Yeah. He may only get 4 of them, 5 of them this year, but he's gonna get the bulk of the TDs on that team.
Yeah.
Nate, was the 310 is what, 34 overall? Is that right?
Yeah.
Am I doing those? Okay, so on Superflex, 34 overall for me. I like, especially this deep into the process, I like to just put names with those picks, and just, so for me, I would be looking at, do I want Puka Nacua or Zeke, or do I want Sean Tucker or Izzy or Zeke? They're 31 and 32. Puka is 34. So, in that range, but I want those guys or Zeke is what
I think it depends.
I'm looking at.
I think it depends on your build, right? Are you in that win now mode?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Or are you in that, I could be a playoff team, but I don't know. Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in win now, I don't mind sending a late third for Zeke, but I think at the point where Zeke's at, I probably would just hold on to the rookie pick.
There's not a ton of teams that he could land on that I am overly optimistic. In fact, actually, I'm a little worried about some of the landing spots when we talk about the touchdown upside, because he was mentioned with Philly. And as much as we love the offense in Philly,
that would be
but at the goal line, look how much they utilize Jalen Hurts there, and that negates it to me just a little bit, but not by a ton. I think your best value is before his landing spot, because I think that it can I don't know if it can improve. I mean, there might be a spot out there, not to put us all on the spot necessarily, but I don't know where that one landing spot for Zeke that his value significantly improves.
Okay, well, Nate, hang on, because that actually leads into Hal's question: is how much could you reasonably sell Zeke for post rookie draft this year?
Nothing.
Yeah.
I don't think you could
Without
get
a landing spot right now, it's tough to put a price tag on Ezekiel Elliott.
So is he that guy that you're sitting there ultimately going, okay, he's going to die on my roster?
Yeah. You got to hope he has that Jamal Williams type season where he just comes in and maybe he's that touchdown vulture.
That's fair. I mean, I don't disagree with that. But I mean, listen, if I can go get Zeke for that 310, on a team that I know I'm competing on, if I'm a playoff team and I'm sitting there with a 310 and somebody's going to offer me Zeke, now I'm not saying Zeke's going to push me to the championship,
sure,
but there's a possibility.
Yep, definitely.
If I'm already a playoff team, who gives a crap about the 310?
Tampa would actually be a sexy spot for Zeke.
Hey, stop it. No, no, it would not.
The humidity down there would be good for his joints.
I think Toronto's got a great team up there.
Yeah. Too fast. Toronto, the TFL's too fast for Zeke. Now, Nate, I got to ask, we talked about DeAndre Hopkins on 4th and Frames last Tuesday. You picked him there at the back end or the top end of the 4th as the wide receiver 17. I mentioned that the Detroit Lions would be my most favorable landing spot in terms of fantasy output. But what's your number one landing spot for DeAndre Hopkins?
I mean, from a personal standpoint,
sure,
it's to be here.
Yeah.
From a true fantasy perspective, number one, obviously we want to pair him up into an offense that has the volume to get to it and a quarterback that's competent enough to maintain that, and that quick, I would say, familiarity with him. And that becomes challenging because there's a few teams that I really like. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to see him end up in Buffalo. I would love to see him end up in LA or with the Chargers. I would love to see him in Kansas City. No, you're competing. So it's like, I don't know if I have a specific favorite one spot. That really, I tell you one that actually is sneaky that I would really like, but I don't think it would actually work because I don't think they have the cap, would be Dallas. I would have no problem with him in Dallas lining up opposite CeeDee Lamb. That would be
with Cooks there,
very intriguing. Again, you're talking about what target share and what target share of a voluminous, voluminous offense do you want? I don't want 30% on a shit offense, but I also don't want 15% spread around. It's my concern with KC. Not a single spot, no receiver had 1,000 yards, but no, we didn't have a receiver named DeAndre Hopkins either.
Right there. That was the exact point that I was going to make is I know Mahomes has been, he spreads the ball around outside of Kelsey, but he also has not had a receiver that level, since Tyreek left. And Tyreek had no issues. I know that their games are very different, but I just think someone as elite as Hopkins is, I don't think there's any way Mahomes doesn't end up just peppering both him and Kelsey with targets if he does land there. And I think from a fantasy perspective, that's my favorite spot for Hopkins. I think every spot has its concerns, it has its holes, but at the end of the day, I think it's the best quarterback in the league, and the only clear target ahead of him is Kelsey. And so, I mean, anywhere else outside of Kansas City, the quarterback's not going to be as good, and there's going to be just as much target competition anywhere else. So I'd like to see him in Kansas City.
Yeah, it'd be a great spot. But you said Jared Goff's no good. I don't appreciate that.
Wait, who said that? I said that?
No, Drew said that.
Oh, yeah, Drew hates Jared Goff.
Listen, Drew's just hating. Drew's just hating. I mean, Jared Goff went to or brought a team almost to the Super Bowl. I think he might have gone to the Super Bowl, right? So or right close to it. So
he did, and then laid an egg.
Well, it doesn't matter.
It absolutely matters. You play to win the game.
Okay, so he cracked in the last game of the year. I mean, dude is young, whatever. Then he goes to Detroit and has a phenomenal year. Everybody hating on him, and he just has a phenomenal year.
Jared Goff is an average quarterback
He's an average quarterback
that can succeed as long as he has a great offensive line and is surrounded by great weapons. But as soon as the offensive line breaks down, or as soon as he doesn't have
Russell Wilson wants to talk to you right now. He's like, yeah,
and that's fine too. I'm just saying, Goff is not somebody that's going to elevate an offense. He can be serviceable in a good offense, but he's not going to elevate an offense. That's the issue that I have with him. And for fantasy, that doesn't really matter, because if he has protection and if he has weapons around him, he's going to be successful. But if he's my real life NFL quarterback, I'm not excited, because I know our ceiling is maybe a playoff team. And I know that we're not going to make a deep playoff run. So from a real NFL standpoint, it's hard to get excited about Goff, but we're talking about fantasy. That's a completely different discussion. So
dude throws for 4,000 yards.
You're also hoping that the secondary in Detroit stays as, I'd say, porous as they've been in the past, where they are forced to continue to put the ball in his hands and score. I've been quick to say that of all the NFC teams that I want to support, Detroit going into the draft was a team that I was willing to hitch my wagon to and say, let's do this. I've had a little Detroit run in the past where maybe longer than last 20 something years, but when they had Barry Sanders and Herman Moore and the rest of that gang, was extremely fun to watch. And I'm getting close to, I don't see the same team, of course, but I would like for them to do something a little bit. And I don't want to have a bad secondary, but a bad secondary is not a bad thing from an IDP or from a fantasy standpoint for your quarterback.
No, it's beautiful for fantasy. A good offense and a bad defense is a match made in heaven whenever we're over here in fantasy land. And I want to make it clear, I don't hate Goff. Like I want to see him succeed, because he helped bring the Rams out of the Jeff Fisher depths of hell. McVay helped as well, but he was a part of that. And he's a great guy. It seems like, by all accounts. I think he's a little bit overrated of a real NFL quarterback. That's all.
That's fair. Fair.
Better or worse than not Sam Darnold, but Sam Bradford.
Sam Bradford was going to be really good, man, if he could have just stayed healthy. No, that's a comparison that just makes me want to go stick my head in the toilet. It just makes me sad.
Give yourself a swirly.
Being a Rams fan, having to live through that, it just
don't do that. You're in a hotel room. That would not be good.
That's the level of punishment that I want to put on myself.
Oh,
that.
You should see the Rams jerseys that I have in my closet is a telltale sign for 20 years of less than mediocrity, of terrible disappointment. And it starts with Sam Bradford and Chris Long and
I love Chris Long.
Steven Jackson. Yeah, I'm not talking about, these aren't all players that but talk about wasted opportunities. Chris Long, luckily he goes to Philly and gets,
thankfully he got a ring,
redemption. Steven Jackson never did, but
Steven Jackson might be, he's one of my favorite NFL players of all time, and I think possibly the most underrated running back.
Steven Jackson was so. I went, training camp about it every year that they were in St. Louis here, and I never once thought that I could ever tackle an NFL player. Never did that cross my mind that I'm like, yeah, I could, but I thought I could just let him run into me. Big enough guy, and
right. Maybe he tripped.
Playing a high school football is going to mean anything. I'm not that guy. I'm not fucking Al Bundy. But I thought, all right, if anything, I'll just go and hopefully he, knees me in the chest, falls down. I get a shoestring wrapped around my finger, breaks the finger, but he goes down. And then they ran these swing routes right next to the fence. I was on the fence line, and he caught it and probably about 5 feet away, and he had about 7 strides in when he passed me. And at that point, it was at that moment when I realized there is not a price point in the world that you would pay me to stand in front of that when he has a goal in mind, which is to get to the goal behind me.
Run you.
Never, ever going to do. And it's a humbling thing to finally just go, yeah, I could never do that. I just, I mean, one thing if a running back wants to run around me, got it. Yeah, I'm never going to catch anybody, never going to catch defensive lineman, honestly, their speed. But yeah, Steven Jackson, fucking monster, just in pads and shorts too. So you saw just those fucking tree trunks popping up high by my face, and I'm 6 foot, and they were high knee drills were up to my chin. It was terrifying.
I so wish I had that drop right now. Pag. I need that. We got to get that. Jorge, we got work to do. We got to get some drops.
There's your homework.
All right, we're in the 7th round of this redraft startup draft, 1 QB, half point PPR. We'll go around the frames here. You each give me one guy that you like to target in this mid round. Drew, go ahead, buddy.
Well, I'll tell you here in just a second. Whatever. I got a pick coming up here in about 3 picks, so I'll let you know whenever that comes around. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, I don't see him getting taken. So I like Rashad Bateman quite a bit this year. I got a puff piece coming on him here in the near future. I think I said this the last mock draft too, and I still haven't gotten it done. So, but
there's your homework, as you say.
Yeah, that is my homework. I like Rashad Bateman quite a bit. I think that I know that the rookie hype is real. I know a lot of people like Zay Flowers, but just me personally, Bateman's not too far removed from college that I don't mind looking back at his prospect profile. Whenever you look at his prospect profile, it looks better than Zay Flowers. I mean, he was an early declare. He's got the better size, and then he comes into the NFL, and whenever he was healthy, I didn't see that he did anything that would make us sour on him as a player. I mean, he was electric whenever he was out there on the field. Now, the injury concerns are real, but I think Todd Monken is going to, as it's been well documented, I think they're going to, that his offense, I think they're going to pass more, and he still has to deal with Mark Andrews. I think he's still, number 2 in the pecking order behind him. But as far as that wide receiver room with Bateman and Zay Flowers, Odell, if I have to pick one, I think Bateman is the wide receiver one on that team. And I like throwing a dart on him in the middle rounds.
Yep, I dig it. Gator?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to give off my strategy right now. I mean, it's a mock. Here's the thing. I got sniped at 6'11" because I really thought DeAndre Swift was going to get back to me. At the same time, again, I'm looking at it as a half point PPR. I already have 3 studs. Excuse me.
Oh my God, Nate.
At running back. And I'm getting a little light there at running back or at wide receiver. The one that I'm really looking to see how far he's going to go down the board and see if he makes it back to me at 8-12 is going to be, George Pickens or do I go ahead and have to go get my quarterback at 8?
Yeah.
But I think George Pickens, AJ Dillon, somewhere in that range is that this interesting, middle of this draft here anyway for me.
Nate has now he sniped me in the 2nd round. He sniped me in the 3rd round, in the 6th round, and again here in the 7th round. All guys that I was targeting.
Can't snipe you in the 3rd round. 3rd round means you had picked before me.
But
you just failed to take it.
You did though, because the 2 guys that I wanted no, you're right. Sorry, you technically sniped me in the 4th round because I was going to take Mixon in the 4th, so I got the numbers wrong. But yeah, so you sniped me in the 2nd round, the 4th round, and then you sniped me with Herbert and then Gibson again. So
you're saying he sniped you every other round?
Yeah. It's just rotating rounds of making my life a living hell.
We're going to have either a really bad season collectively, or we're going to be in good shape as long as we're not by each other too often.
That's right. But sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off because I do want to hear your middle round selections that you like too, Nate.
Oh, I mean those are 2 right there. Last time we did this mock, Drew, you mentioned I took Antonio Gibson, and you had thought that it was a great value at the spot, and I have taken Gibson prior to that and probably going forward in about every draft. I really think that this Bieniemy offense is going to lead to a more Gibson centric role than Brian Robinson. And that's not knock against Brian Robinson, because I was listening to the Washington Commanders, the Locked On Commanders beat writer today, who actually said that if in a fantasy draft, he would have taken Brian Robinson first and foremost. Now, doesn't mean he's right. He, beat writer versus fantasy analyst or whatever the guys on the radio, you want to consider. But all in all, in a half point PPR, we know Gibson has that upside that we desire. And especially if they don't start to use, hopefully, Curtis Samuel in the backfield more times than not, like they were doing in Kansas City, I think that just elevates that floor. And I like Antonio Gibson. I mean, like I said, hell, missing 2 games last year, the last 2 games, he was still RB31. So where I have him as a 3 or as a 4, about 3, my RB3 for my team or my number 2 flex, I'm content with that. And
I mean, whenever you look at what Bieniemy did, I know it was Andy Reid as well, but whenever you look at what the Chiefs did last year, especially down the stretch with Jerick McKinnon, if you're going to profile somebody as the Jerick McKinnon of this Washington team, it's clearly Antonio Gibson, especially with no more J.D. McKissick as well. Gibson is a much better pass catcher than Brian Robinson could ever dream of being. So it's I think Gibson has the success already. He has some solid seasons under his belt as a fantasy running back. So I've been a big Antonio Gibson fan since his rookie year. So it's hard for me not to be excited about him this year. I just hope that they actually deploy him in the passing game this season the way they should have been.
The one thing they also mentioned too, and this, you guys, take this for what it's worth, and maybe we can elaborate and figure out what we collectively think. They run that RPO system quite a bit. At least Bieniemy is planning to bring that over from KC. And Sam Howell at North Carolina ran that same offense where he, I think for his career, put up over 1,000 yards rushing. Does that lean into Antonio Gibson, or does that lean into Brian Robinson Jr.? And I think the easy answer would think, oh, of course, Antonio Gibson, right? You run that RPO. And then if you want to do play action off of the same thing, and it just sets up a lot of different pieces, but maybe Gibson's not set up for the RPO more so than Robinson. Chris, have you given much consideration to that line of thinking?
Not to that extent yet. I want to see more of OTAs. I want to see more of training camp, try to figure out what they're going to be doing on that offense, the system that they're going to run. But it's a great point. Is he going to fit into what they're going to run? But when you watch them, he's the more explosive running back. So if I'm picking out of the 2, I'm going to roll Gibson over Brian Robinson all day.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you, because I think just going off of what we've heard and what we've seen, it's going to be, they're going to use Brian Robinson a little bit different than they have in the past.
Yeah.
With this new offense. And I think that's going to include a lot more passing. I think you may see both of them on the field at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So, I mean, that's just, I love the idea of Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson on the field at the same time. I think that sounds great. I don't know how Washington fans feel, but
I mean, I feel pretty good. They're two pretty useful guys in that backfield.
If they can get production, if Sam Howell can do what, maybe not just the floor outcome or output, we'd like a little bit more of a ceiling play. He's got the pieces around him to be successful. There's no doubt about that. I mean, from wide receiver 1 to 3, they even have. I mean, there's teams that would absolutely kill for an offense with the playmakers that Washington has. And it's crazy to think that I feel like all of them get dumped down further. So look at that, like just where Terry McLaurin goes, it's what's that? Yep.
Going back to the golf conversation.
No, I think that's a very fair summary. He's a meh guy, but you don't have to hunt for a quarterback. He's a stopgap option, and you could do much worse. I think that's a very fair way to look at golf.
Absolutely. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No. That's perfect. It's just kind of like the same thing that we feel about that. We feel about Washington with a lot of the players. Everybody gets dropped down just a little bit because it's meh. And I think that there's solid pieces that could. The question is who in any given week and can somehow support more than one fantasy, one or two, more than one per week. And it makes it challenging you don't want to take the goose egg when you have Jahan Dotson, and the next week take the goose egg when it's not, insert any other player. I don't want to start isolating the guys because that's not fair to beat up on Antonio Gibson since he's on my team now. And that made me so mad.
I was just saying, you're going to point at the guy that's on my team with Jahan Dotson now. Okay.
Yes, that was my.
That's how you do it.
Yeah, I'm not done. You have good receiver.
Made a very big mistake, very big oversight. I was thinking about Khalil Herbert in the 8th round, and then for some reason I let somebody with a Bears logo as their deeper profile picture have the opportunity to have 2 picks between my next pick, and should have known better.
Yeah, but his first of those 2 was Michael Thomas.
Right, but I still gave a Bears fan 2 opportunities to take Khalil Herbert in the 8th and 9th round, and that's an oversight on my part. That's a rookie mistake. You got to look ahead, see who's picking between your next pick, and if a guy's going to put his favorite team's freaking logo as his profile picture, you got to use that to your advantage and know what you're doing. So that was a rookie mistake on my part for sure.
Oh, so you're saying you were getting information by his avatar?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That avatar is a giveaway. Khalil Herbert's still on the board. I think he's a perfect value in this range, and if anybody's going to know that, a Bears fan's going to know that. So I should have known that he would take him.
Would you take Khalil Herbert over Jordan Addison? Which is who you took in 8-2.
Honestly, in a 3 wide receiver, I think it's probably a better bet to take Jordan Addison. Like, I think I made the right pick. I just really like Khalil Herbert this year, but I also don't like the fact that they brought in Roschon Johnson, even though it was just a 4th round pick, and the fact that they brought in Deontay Foreman, who is another running back I really like. Like, before I made the Khalil Herbert Dynasty target profile, they hadn't brought in Deontay Foreman yet, and I'm a really big Deontay Foreman fan too. I think the Bears are building a running back room the correct way. I think there's 2 franchises that are very distinctly building running back rooms the way you should, which is collecting high-end talent that does not cost you very much. And I'm going to pick one of those guys right here as well, in Rashad Penny, who the Philadelphia Eagles, they've got Rashad Penny, DeAndre Swift, and which one? And Kenneth Gainwell. All 3 are productive players, and they're all cheap. And same thing with the Chicago Bears. They've got Khalil Herbert, they got Deontay Foreman, and they got Roschon Johnson. They're all 3 really strong runners. No matter who's on the field, they're going to have a plus back on the field, and they have basically no money invested into the position. So I think that they're 2 really hard backfields to decipher for fantasy purposes, but for NFL purposes, the teams are building it the right way.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. You brought up the money for Philly. I don't think they're paying $1 million to one person in that backfield right now.
No,
which is absolutely insane when you think of the 3 backs they have.
Yeah,
like DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, and then of course Kenneth Gainwell.
Yeah, I mean Swift and Gainwell are still both on their rookie contracts, and Penny didn't command much money because of his injuries. But I think Rashad Penny is one of the best pure runners in the league right now. Period. Like across all running backs, whenever he's on the field, the issue is he can't stay on the field.
Stay on
but
the field,
like these 4 games I'm going to get out of Rashad Penny to start the year, my team's going to get off to a hot start.
4-0 and then nothing in the end.
Right. And now I'm just really starting to get annoyed, Nate, because I had one other running back in my queue, and it was freaking Samaje Perine. Like, why are you sniping me on Samaje Perine in the 10th round?
Well, see, this goes into the season-long strategy of who could potentially have the most value gain through the first 2-3 weeks of the season that I could potentially turn into value later.
Yep.
And that's Samaje Perine. Because
Absolutely.
when Javonte Williams doesn't play weeks 1, 2, and 3, and Samaje puts up a 100 burger in one of them and a touchdown, and we'll say 16 points across 2 of the 3 weeks, and all of a sudden, team that is relying on Josh Jacobs, Rashad Penny, and Jerick McKinnon might say, shit. But now you're smarter than that. You wouldn't fall prey to the here comes Javonte Williams back and Samaje Perine's going into a timeshare. But the good news is, if there's, if you're not the fool in the league, and or however that saying goes, we all know what I'm trying to say. But long story short, there's 11 other people that might be willing to give you more value than a 10th round investment from a person like Samaje Perine.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I mean, Sean Payton was pretty clear that he brought Samaje Perine in to have a role, and that, that Samaje Perine was quoted saying that Sean Payton told him, look at my days in New Orleans as using a 2-back system. You're going to have a role in this offense. And he very well could be the number 1 back out the gate. So I agree 100%. I love that pick.
So I got a question, since Chris is going to be coming up on the clock here in a second. I want to go around the frame. So I'm going to send it to Nate first, and then I want to get Drew, and hopefully by that point, then Chris will be off the clock and he can answer. When it comes to redraft, Nate, you just brought up trading in redraft, after week 3, week 4, when you, like a Samaje Perine. How do you value the players? In Dynasty, I'm looking forward to, okay, what can I get value-wise future, depending on where I'm, whether I'm rebuilding, whether I'm, contending, whatnot. So in a redraft, how do you look at your trades when you're taking a player that, a Samaje Perine that probably Jamal Williams is going to come back and play? You're just going to try to offload him and get everything you can for him. How do the trades, work when it comes to that?
And that's not entirely. I mean, I preface that and set that up as a reason of why I'm taking a 4th running back in the 10th round, and a lot of that has to do with that perceived value increase. There's no doubt that I can't put a singular value on him, but I have to look at the draft. And as the draft's unfolded, so many teams didn't take a running back until late. I mean, or they didn't get their second until late. Team 3, the Chicago Bears, got their first running back and their second in rounds 7 and 9. Rusty Shackelford, again, that's the Javonte Williams and James Cook owner. There's another team that's
that's your target.
Those are my targets right now. And maybe even, team number 9, who has Breece Hall, who might not start the season out healthy, and James Conner, who might not finish the season healthy, potentially. I mean, not to say negative about Conner, he's been fine. And then realistically, Drew, your team, if I didn't know better, I would look and say, okay, Josh Jacobs, and then maybe some depth. And then I would have to look and see that coincidentally, when they don't have the running back depth, they're usually deeper at another position, and that's the wide receiver. So maybe D-Hop doesn't land at an ideal spot. Maybe he lands in KC, and Kadarius Toney's no longer worthwhile for me because I can't have both. And say Hollywood doesn't translate to what he did last year. I'm identifying those wide receivers, and maybe, just maybe, a person like we said, team number 3, maybe he'll give up Calvin Ridley or Tyler Lockett for Samaje Perine, which for me would be a home run.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it would be.
So I think in redraft leagues, the way that I try to tackle those late round targets that end up popping the first few weeks is I want to go try to package up a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 with one of my mid-round picks. Like if I'm looking at Nate's team, if he's going to be the one, say Perine gets off to a hot start, and say Hollywood with no DeAndre Hopkins is out the door. Say Hollywood gets off to a decent start, even with no Kyler Murray out there. But let's say Hollywood and Perine are guns blazing out the gate. I'm going to the Javonte Williams owner, and I'm like, hey, let me give you Hollywood and Perine for AJ Brown, or let me give you Hollywood, Perine, and Kadarius Toney for AJ Brown. Like I want to make 2-for-1s, 3-for-1s, and I always want to be the one getting the one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that I try to do that as quick as I can. Once those guys that start hot out the gate, I try to package those while the iron's hot and make one of those 2-for-1 or 3-for-1 trades.
Just being a dumb question, add-on question to that. Why are you wanting to be the lesser of the?
I'm just not as concerned about depth in redraft, especially for guys like P. Ryan or somebody. Whenever you're going to find guys on the waiver wire that you can, like, I don't look at it as a 2-for-1 because I just opened up a bench spot where I can grab a guy off the waivers now without having to drop somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I didn't really make a 2-for-1. It's a 2-for-2 because now I don't have to burn a roster spot to pick up somebody off waivers. I can do it. I can take a shot without dropping somebody.
Right. Okay. That's what I was looking for. Is like, why were you doing it? So yeah, makes perfect sense to me. Chris, you want to add on to this?
No, you guys made two great points there. I'm pretty much in that same thing, same idea as Drew there. That same thinking process of moving those 2-for-1s, trying to get that top 15, that top 10 positional player where I can take advantage going into those later weeks into the season, especially the fantasy playoffs. I also just try to trade for guys that are have already had their buys. So if you're looking for something like that, try trade for guys that already have their buys, trade guys that haven't had their buys yet, so I can be a more strengthened roster come when we get those buy-mageddons, and I can try to steal some of those wins.
Yep, I like that.
Love it.
But we're rolling. We got a few more rounds left.
The rookie running backs are starting to come off the board now. You got A-Chain at the 10-10, Kendrick Miller at the 11-3, Charbonnet at the 11-4. I love that Kendrick Miller value.
Yeah, for some reason I missed him when I was scrolling. Ended up with Wan'Dale Robinson. Otherwise, I would have taken Kendrick Miller because I do think that we are going to see a minimum a 3 to 4 game suspension. And when that happens, I think Kendrick is going to be producing a ton in that first whatever it is 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, I don't. Oh my goodness! And the Tank Bixby, the rookies are really flying off the board.
You can call it a running back run if you want to. This isn't a running back run. This is a rookie
chasing the upside.
Yeah. This is a dart throw run. It doesn't bring me joy to say this because I love Jamal Williams, the player. He's one of my favorite players just to watch and to listen to post-game interviews, things like that. But I'm not sure he's a better overall football player than Kendrick Miller. And whenever it comes down to it, if Alvin Kamara is suspended, it might take a little while for talent to win out, but I'm a firm believer that talent does win out. And if I'm wrong on who the talent is, then it doesn't matter. But if Kendrick Miller does indeed end up being better than Jamal Williams, I think he could be a great value at that point.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Where do I go? I'm going to go second QB here and take Kirk.
No, you're not. You're not going to do that. Oh.
The Cousine. Not my ideal strategy there to take my second quarterback that kind of early, I guess you could say it would be, but based on the other quarterbacks that were there and the team that they've built around Kirk Cousins, I don't mind scooping him up as my QB2. But with the news that Dalvin Cook is on the move from Minnesota, either going to Miami, the Jets, Buffalo's in the mix there. If he goes to Miami, does that absolutely sink any redraft value for Devin A-Shane Gator?
I mean, listen, the 3 teams you just brought up are all in the AFC East. So
yeah.
I mean, he's the problem.
He's got a type.
I mean, they're blonde. Whether they're some there's
cold,
snow, there's sunshine. Depending on what time of year. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
I'm about to get sniped.
You're fixing to get sniped for sure. Listen, I don't. If he goes to Miami, does he sink? Yes, he sinks everybody. I think.
Of course.
Really do. But
what
I think if he goes to the Jets, I think it hurts every other running back in the Jets.
Yeah, but redraft wise, outside of Breece Hall, are you really drafting Israel Abanikanda
Well, no,
or Bam
no.
Knight in yeah, so
No,
really it hurts Brees.
it hurts Brees.
Sure, yeah.
It also, in my opinion, it hurts a little bit of Garrett Wilson. It hurts a little bit of what's the other wide receiver that could that's never mind. That's
Corey Davis.
Corey Davis.
Yeah, that's it. No.
It's Alan Lazard. It hurts all.
Lazard,
Yeah.
This conversation right here is why I love Garrett Wilson so much.
No,
Yeah, exactly.
He is so much head and shoulders better than everybody else in that wide receiver room, and it's
Mhm.
crazy. I know Rodgers has his best buddy committee, but man, oh thank God!
I think Wilson's in there though. I think Wilson's entering that best
Rodgers is
buddy
in that,
committee.
yeah. I think they I'm not sure. I've seen the video of Rodgers at Taylor Swift. I couldn't tell if Garrett Wilson was there or not.
Miles Teller was.
So there's my point. It's very possible that he could have been there.
Yeah,
Nate,
sure.
you had Herbert, man. You didn't have to do that to
What?
me. Jeez. Oh, this guy. I'm so glad that in Scott Fishbowl you're picking way up at 4 and I'm at 12. I swear to God, if you pull some stuff and move back to 11 or something, I'm switching divisions.
So speaking of Scott Fishbowl, y'all are you going to go to St. Louis live, Drew?
I am. Yep.
Oh hell yeah,
I sure am.
So we've got the two of you at St. Louis live. I'm not sure if any other FIFers, fantasy and framers, are going to be at St. Louis.
No. Not that I know.
But I do know that along with myself, along with Stacy Perez, along with Tyler Heil,
big group,
and Zach Chalupa Batman, the four of us are going to be in Orlando for the live draft. So there's going to be we are taking over Orlando when it comes to the live draft.
So you guys are in separate divisions too, right?
Oh, yeah, there's 3 divisions down there. There's so Stacy and Tyler are in one division.
Okay.
Zach's in another, and then I'm in another. So it's going to be quite interesting, the conversations that we're having down in Orlando.
Yeah.
For the Scott Fishbowl. When the story comes out, it's going to be phenomenal.
Jay, you, Nate, and Zach Chalupa Batman, you guys are all picking from the 104, right?
Correct. Yep.
You guys are probably cooking up quite the strategy over there.
Oh no! We have our 4 chat, and then we have our own little private chat.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, the 4s are saying this, and we're doing no. It's not.
Don't listen to those.
Staying on brand. That is actually what I asked Nate. Right before the show. Like we've done a couple mocks. And I shared the couple mocks that I did, with the first mock I did ended up with Patrick Mahomes at 4, the way the mock rolled out, which was insane.
Wow. That would be so nice.
And then I tried it a different way this last mock, and I shared it with Nate and the rest of the 104 crew.
Yep.
And got some good feedback. So, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. Ultimately, it's going to come down to what is the scoring setting.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's the quarterbacks, or do we push the quarterback back?
And it's going to be, obviously we see that with the Josh Allen talk, is that we know quarterback's going to be affected, at least his style of quarterback. So at least just one of which can encapsulate, a few different styles or players that have maybe not Josh Allen's ceiling, but similar skill sets. And if they're going to bump it up by 30%, if that's what it was, I think it was 27-40. So even more so. Yeah, nothing changes for me at 4. The question then comes down to is all this speculation, every mock draft you do and everyone you see, and it gets all the way through and you get your quarterback 1 and you wait and you go, I'm going to play that wait game, and you wait it out. And then you get someone like Cousins in the 5th round because he slipped way too far, and you get excited about something like that. And then in the real thing, it's the 3rd round, and all of a sudden it goes Cousins, Watson. Well, Watson will be gone, but Cousins, Rodgers, Jones, Geno, Anthony Richardson, and then all of a sudden you're looking and you're looking at Jared Goff and you're going
Yeah.
WWDD. What would Drew do? Just throw your hands in the air and just cuss, because I don't know. I mean, that's the scary part. You just get to that stage and you hope and you can do all these you want, but it's what makes it fun also, is it's a really stressful draft, especially.
I wish y'all would stop hating on Jared Goff. He's a starting quarterback in the NFL.
I'm kidding with Jared Goff. I have no problem. I would be totally fine, especially imagine when once Jameson comes back.
Yeah.
That offense, we've touched on it. We've said it. The defense is going to be bad enough that the offense is going to be really, really potentially special for fantasy.
And they got a great offensive line. So back to my point, he's got an offensive line and he's got weapons. I'm in on Goff this year. I like him because the situation's good. Now,
rewind like 35 minutes ago,
and you're going to hear the exact same thing. As long as he has a good offensive line and weapons around him, he'll succeed. But as soon as things start to break down and you ask him to go win games for you, you're like, oh shit, we're screwed.
Hal's with us on the scoring for Scott Fishbowl. Scott Fishbowl is scoring for a
12-point TDs. Maybe that's the answer. Who knows?
Did you guys have a process to picking your draft spot with the 1-4? Is it just like a favorite spot that you guys like to pick from prior drafts?
So the third round reversal, I want the competitive edge of having. Like for me, I think there's 5 quarterbacks that I would be happy with at the 4. And, I mean, that goes for me, I would put Lamar ahead of Burrow.
Yep.
But maybe that changes with scoring. Who knows?
With the scoring.
I can't envision that they take away much of the one thing that makes them a cheat code. And that third round, I just want to have that little bit of an advantage over those guys at the turn and set the trend at that point. Do I, take that number, that elite second receiver typically is what I would probably be focusing on, or that's also the same time when that, I've seen people like Derrick Henry and some of those backs fall all the way there. And then I would like to begin that versus have to wait till it goes all the way 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, and then back to me and then make that decision there. I don't know. I can't speak for everybody else.
So let me ask you this, Nate. I know last year there was some, there was a premium on having an accurate quarterback with the way that Scott Fishbowl scoring was. So I understand not having Justin Fields in that group. If Scott Fishbowl scoring comes out and there's not that premium on accuracy from the quarterback position, would you have Justin Fields in that group, or is he still lower for you in terms of the quarterbacks? Because I had, for just regular redraft rankings, no Scott Fishbowl included, I have a clear top 6 with the guys you've already mentioned, and then Fields in there as well. But he wouldn't be in there for the Scott Fishbowl scoring, assuming it's the way it was last year, with the accuracy concerns.
Yeah, that's about the break point, because there's so many guys towards the bottom that moved up, the Derek Carrs of the world, and I hate to use, in hindsight, Geno Smith, but I didn't know that going into it, that I would rather pivot and take that elite, the Justin Jeffersons, maybe the CMCs, Jamar Chases, or Kelsey in this case too, with tight end premium, and try to wait. But again, that's what happens. You get in that guessing game, and all of a sudden you try to guess and you're stuck with not an ideal situation.
Right. Yeah. And then, I mean, you've got, I didn't even mention Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence, who, whenever you factor in the accuracy proportion of it, at that point, I would consider taking those guys over Fields. But on an equal playing field, all things considered, I would prefer Fields. But that's this right here, this discussion is why we're not doing a mocking after dark Scott Fishbowl version yet, because we have no idea what the hell we're going to be stacking up against.
Yeah, I mean, we can go off of last year's, but it's still it's going to change whenever Scott brings out the new scoring, which is, we sit here in it's redraft or whether it's Dynasty or whatever, it's a continuous basically scoring. That's one thing that I do love with Scott Fish. It's always changing. right? So there's it's never the same league as you were in the last year or the last 5 years or the last 10 years, however long you've been playing in Scott Fish. It's never been the same. There's always something different. There's a twist. There's a scoring element that is just gonna be like, damn it. And it always matters. Scott doesn't do these things. I think Scott actually is, by week 2 of this year, Scott's already working on Scott Fish 14.
Probably. Yeah.
So now here's something real quick, since I'm looking at last year's scoring. And you earlier, Drew, mentioned is Justin Fields. I probably didn't look close enough. If you had to guess where Justin Fields finished overall last year,
67%, 68% completion rating.
Don't even not take the completion. I'm talking about fantasy scoring in Scott Fish League.
Scott Fish, okay. He was QB.
I would guess like
9,
QB 7 or 8 would have been my guess.
He was 15 overall.
15.
15 overall? Like
every
overall
player.
players?
Yeah, of everybody. So Mahomes was won by a substantial amount, by 40 points. Then Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. The typical band of Then Travis Kelce enters the top 5. Of course, tight end premium goes a long way. But then that's where I love seeing Geno Smith slot in, because on top of just having, the amazing comeback season, it also benefits real football players, which I've heard for God knows how long, 20 years, people saying, I wish it was, it was more like real football and rewarded the good football players. And it kind of did. And I'm like, I don't want, yeah, great. I'll take that. But I'm glad to see Geno rewarded. And then you get the running backs. And so, I mean, if you look at the top 20, there's a good blend. There's the top 20, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of the 20 are quarterbacks. So there's 8 without.
Gator, I'm gonna pull this back up real quick. We got Cass took over. How's my team look at the 104? So let's take a look. Let's answer this question here and see.
I'm gonna come back over to it. I want to pull it up. So here's the 104. We got Chase at the 104.
Yep.
Pollard at 209. Go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I thought you were going to keep reading there. Higgins at the 3-4. Higgins at the 3-4. Jahmyr Gibbs at the 4-9. Christian Watson 5-4. And then Christian Kirk at the 6-9. Before we jump into when he picked his first quarterback, looking at those positional skilled players there, pretty solid, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. It's a little – so it's tough because I think having Chase and Higgins – you cap your upside a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's like if you look at the receivers that go off the board after Higgins, like DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith, I've got Higgins technically ranked ahead of those guys. So, if you just go straight off rankings, it's the right pick to make. But you are capping your upside a little bit. So I try to avoid that personally. But it makes sense. I love Jahmyr Gibbs where he went. I'm having this internal struggle right now because I've got Bijan as a top 5 running back in redraft, and I've got Gibbs down at like 17 or 18. But the gap, the teams that invested in these guys in the NFL draft just a few months ago was not that big. They were not picked that many picks apart. And so it's like if the teams are willing to invest that much in them, I probably shouldn't have them that far apart. And that's something that I'm going to actually be talking about here in a couple days. And so I think that I might be a little bit too low on Gibbs. And then Christian Watson, I think if you look at the receivers in that room, I think that he's set up to be peppered with targets this year. And obviously it's coming from Jordan Love and not Aaron Rodgers. But I think in the 5th round with the upside he has, it's a very high upside build. It gets me excited. I'm getting a little hot over here looking at this team. I ain't gonna lie.
I want to know how many times he hovered over Joe Burrow's name at the 4-9 and wanted to hit it and just was like, but I can wait. I can get T-Law.
How do you not go ahead and smash that
Maybe he thought that he could get him back around in the 5th.
Yeah.
Because
No way. He's the only when he's the 4th quarterback, and you had 3 of them taken before you in the previous round.
Well, he only had 3 teams picking between him, and one of them already had a quarterback. It's a quarterback league.
That's the wrong way to look at it, in my opinion. When you said there's only 3 teams to pick between you, that's 6 picks.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
He's not making it back in 6 picks.
Well, it's technically only 4 picks because you know that the team with Mahomes isn't going to take him.
Yeah.
So you have 4 picks. Well, I mean, you would hope that in a 1 quarterback league somebody wouldn't invest 2 top 4 picks in a quarterback.
You smash that pick when you got Chase and you got Higgins. Go ahead and smash that pick. That's
might as well just go all in.
One. That's probably the biggest. Yeah, that I would be like, okay,
here you go.
Yeah, you already invested in the offense. Go get it. Gibbs, I get, but go get your quarterback. Get that double stack right away.
Yeah, I think once you've invested that much in the pass catchers, you're making a clear bet that, like, Joe Burrow's going to win the MVP this year is basically what you're saying at that point.
Here's the part that screws with me is you had, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12, 10, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6,
what are these numbers?
5. Come back to you. So there you had 13 picks from the time you picked Higgins. They all from the time that Allen was picked, that you had 13 picks between that, and they all gave you the opportunity to
leaving Burrow on the board. Yeah.
Left Burrow on the board for you to double stack.
But he did get an interesting. You fast forward a few rounds, he did get an interesting stack with Christian Kirk and Trevor Lawrence.
Lawrence there.
So in a 1 quarterback league, I don't hate that. And then Alexander Mattison, he has some serious upside if Dalvin Cook does get moved.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the Detroit backfield locked up with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Zach Charbonnet, we'll see what comes of him as a rookie. But rookie running backs with 2nd round draft capital in redraft leagues, that's where I like taking my mid-late round shots. Like instead of trying to grab the veteran running backs that's on their 3rd team that we're trying to paint this rosy picture where he's finally like Chase Edmonds whenever he went to Miami. He was going right around Kenneth Walker's rookie year.
Yep.
And I thought that might be a good bet because Chase Edmonds, a fancy landing spot, things like that. And we need to start believing these veteran running backs whenever they show us who they really are, instead of thinking that a new landing spot's going to fix it.
How do you feel about second round running backs that, had a very good rookie year in their 2nd year with a 2nd year running back coming in? Just asking. I mean, Kenneth Walker fans want to know.
I'm very upset with Seattle. I'm very upset with Seattle. I still like Kenneth Walker a ton. I think they're going to be a much more balanced backfield.
Well, here's the thing that I like about what Seattle did is they didn't just add a 2nd round running back. They also added a 1st round wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah,
they are set up to be a very good offense overall. It might be tough week to week trying to decide which receiver to rank where and which running back to rank where, but as a whole, their offense is going to be extremely exciting. And I do think that Charbonnet is a very good complement to Kenneth Walker because Walker did struggle a little bit in the goal-to-goal situations, things like that, but he's the home run hitter. He's going to make huge plays, and then Zach Charbonnet is going to give you that consistent work. He'll be good in the goal line. I think he's a little bit better in the passing game as well in terms of a pass catcher. So it's frustrating for fantasy players, but the Seahawks fans should be excited at least.
Yeah. Ultimately, he said I fumbled the bag. I don't think so. I think I know that it would have been fun to have brother, but if we're he said he couldn't pass up on Jahmyr Gibbs' value, and that's the replacement value, that the value for Joe Burrow versus T-Law, if in exchange for who you would have taken instead of Gibbs as your RB2 down towards the bottom, which would have been someone maybe like, Rashid White or Dalvin Cook. I feel like I would probably rather have Gibbs and T-Law than the opposite. it's the fun factor. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, given on a week-to-week basis, yes, you can win your given week if you have 350 plus with touchdown to each guy, which is a capable situation. But maybe on those bad weeks, which we don't project, but diversify. I think stacking is definitely more suitable for a best ball format. But
I think the best ball popularity has kind of made that feel like more of a priority in redraft than it really is.
Yeah, well, it's always been fun. It's just never been paramount.
Well, right. I think it's like one of the first questions I asked you, it's that bomb, that 50, 60 yarder. Here's where I will give him credit. And the more I look into his team, I'm actually liking what he did. Okay, you passed Burrow, right? You passed on Burrow, you went Gibbs. Mm-hmm. But he also turned around in round 14 and went and got Jared Goff. And as we have heard, Gibbs is probably going to play more out of the slot. So Montgomery is actually going to probably be a factor in the backfield. But if Gibbs is playing out of the slot, that makes Jared Goff's job on my team as a fantasy manager a lot more important when it comes to Gibbs.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So now you missed that on double stacking. But you did got great value in the 14th round, getting Jared Goff, quarterback 66 or something on this board, and you stacked him with Jahmyr Gibbs, you're just fine. Mm-hmm. I don't have a problem with it at all because you're going to use Trevor Lawrence as your starter, especially in a 1 QB. And if for some reason when Lawrence gets hurt or Jared Goff just does what he did last year, boom, you're going to plug in Jared Goff. You've got your stack that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, honestly, what Nate said is the perfect way to look at it in a one quarterback league.
What I said? Oh, okay. I said. Now he's sucking up, Nate. Now he's sucking.
You'll get there, Gator. Don't worry. Good time.
You look at the round where he took him. Would you rather have Joe Burrow and one of the running backs that went right after Lawrence, like James Cook or Rachaad White? Yeah. Or would you rather have Jahmyr Gibbs and Trevor Lawrence? And I think that in a one quarterback league, I would rather have Jahmyr Gibbs and Trevor Lawrence in a vacuum. So you're not taking into the factor that he does have Chase and Higgins and things like that. But again, you don't want to overvalue having the stack either. So I think in a one quarterback league, I honestly like the round. I like the way he went. I really do.
I do too.
Now, when he plays against Team 2, who has Burrow, and they go head to head, then he'll be pissed off a little every time Burrow.
Right.
But if he is, it'd be more pissed whenever Burrow throws a touchdown to Tyler Boyd or Joe Mixon. Those are the fun weeks that we look forward to.
The perfect scenario would have been if Calvin Ridley wouldn't have went one pick before him in the 5th round, and he could have had Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence. Because me personally, I think Calvin Ridley, he's a top 15 receiver for me this year. I think he's going to be the one on that team. I like the Ridley Lawrence stack a lot. That's you talk about stacking. That's a stack I like a lot this year in one quarterback leagues. But I like the team. I think he did a really good job. I think this was a really sharp draft. These guys that drafted with us tonight did not make this easy.
All right, fellas. So we got one more. Great draft by everybody. Thank you all for jumping in with us. But Hal wants to know, what's Breece Hall's worth in Dynasty right now? I'm going to go around the frames. I'm going to go Nate first, Drew, then you, Chris.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, I think that the news of not being 100% going into probably drops a little bit, but man, I personally don't think that there's. I mean, I don't have my Dynasty rankings necessarily, like you guys do, but I think he's probably I have him at 4 or 3 in my Dynasty running backs, and that value worth in Dynasty trade, that obviously that's predicated on need and want, and I have a hard time giving up the value of someone like Breece Hall unless, I don't know. I would much rather have investments in wide receiver in Dynasty than running back. Just long-term investment. The worth is there for 3 times the projected usage, and now they're already throwing even more so. And if you like the talks about Dalvin Cook or the talks about Zeke joining the Jets, I mean, even takes maybe 1 full year away from. I mean, what's the lifespan that we put on Breece Hall? Do we say 7 years? Is that a fair dynasty career where he's an RB1, or is that too long?
Maybe half a year too long.
How many years does he have left in his rookie deal?
Well, yeah, I hate that. Don't you hate that? That's where we're at.
Brutal, man.
It really is
so brutal.
It's like you want him to sign an extension before, and 2/3 is what he says. Yes,
yeah, there you go.
Yes, if you want, I'll invite you into the league, and I will give you 2/3 for Breece Hall. I don't have 2/3 because Gator has all my picks for going forward.
So I got 3 first rounders, 3 second rounders, and 3 third rounders of Nate's. We'll see him in 2027.
And he finished 2 spots ahead of me. So both of us got ribbons for
participation. But I've got his first and my first, and his second and my second, and his first and my first, and his second and my second.
And we have 8 people in that league, and people are dropping out.
And
so
enjoy
your
all jokes aside,
whole league's gonna be shut down in a year.
It sucks. No BS. That's what I about that.
No BS. Nate and I were talking about this afterwards. I'm like, Nate, why would you do that deal? And he was like, I was going for it. This league isn't going to last. Like,
that's an unfortunate.
Nate, I just got all this draft capital, and he's like, it's probably not going to last.
People get bored.
It's worthless money now.
People get bored in the summer. They start doing a bunch of dynasty startups,
but I didn't get Drew, you and Chris. I want to hear your 2 takes on this because I trust your opinion with the dynasty side more than I do.
I've got Breece as my running back too. So in Superflex, with all things considered, that comes out to a early to mid second round pick, and then he's right there in the middle of the first round in 1 quarterback dynasty league. So I'm not selling off Breece Hall by any means. If I can get as you mentioned, the wide receiver position being as valuable as it is, if I can turn Breece Hall into Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb, one of those guys, even if I have to put a pick with it or something like that, I'm doing that all day. But, if you're a rebuilding team, as far as I'm concerned, every running back can go. Like you can get those guys in your rookie drafts, things like that. As you're rebuilding, try to stack up the guys. If you're rebuilding, try to stack up the positions with longer shelf lives, like receiver and quarterback, and even tight end to an extent. If you can possibly if you can get an elite tight end plus some, like if I can get Kyle Pitts plus for Breece Hall and I'm rebuilding, I'll do something like that.
All right. So before we go to Chris, I want to add this into it because this is part of what Hal is talking about. He's a rebuilding team, no RBs. Breece was on the trade block.
Yeah, he's the rebuilding team, and somebody put Breece on the trade block. I would not go for it. Running backs, unless you're a contender, running backs don't really do you a lot of good. So if you're rebuilding, hold off a little bit, try to make some moves to position yourself to where you can transition from rebuilding to competing.
Yep.
And then go after those running backs. But if you know that you're rebuilding, you've got some other building blocks to work on before you need to worry about running backs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Maybe go in, make a lower offer, start with your floor. If the guy accepts, great. You're getting a valuable cornerstone piece for you.
You can accelerate your rebuild.
Yeah, on your roster that you can go and turn around and move once he gets healthy and starts producing fantasy.
That's what I was going to say too, man. Absolutely right.
So
I just did that with Javonte Williams this past year.
Yeah, exactly.
I bought him at basically for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I bought him for a third and I want to say it was Michael Pittman in a third last year.
Yep.
I mean, Michael Pittman might be something, but we still don't know.
So might Javonte Williams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, so might. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But all I needed for him to do is get on the field. If he's back on the field, the first game he's back on the field, that he doesn't leave the field injured.
Yep.
I can turn around right around and sell him for a third or for a second.
Mhm.
Well, and Hal just said 2 seconds could possibly get him. Honestly, even if I'm rebuilding, I don't mind moving 2 seconds
Yeah,
for Brees.
no, I would do, in a heartbeat.
I would do that even if I'm rebuilding. So if you think that gets it done, go do it, man. Because
here's what I would do when it comes to Dynasty. I would throw a second and a third.
Yeah, knowing that you are comfortable
If
to
you're
move the 2 seconds. Yeah.
always leave yourself room to negotiate.
Give you a room to negotiate, because if he comes back and goes, no, I want a second and the first. You know what? Screw it. I'll give you 2 seconds.
Sure.
One thing I can promise you is,
and be done.
Well, one thing I can promise you is during the season, once Brees Hall gets healthy and once he's out there rumbling and stumbling in that offense, his value is going to go up, and there's going to be a contender that is going to want to overpay. I don't even know if it would be overpay, but he would want to buy Brees Hall, and then you can go flip him for one of the receivers we talked about or something like that, or get a first out of him plus some or something like that, and again, accelerate your rebuild. So everybody has a price, and so if you can get him for 2 seconds, like Gator said, start out a little bit lower than that. Leave yourself room to negotiate. And if you can work up to 2 seconds and get him, even if you're rebuilding, I think that's absolutely worth the price.
Yes, sir. That's it for us. Thank you to everybody that joined the draft and drafted with us, watched along, asked questions. We appreciate each and every one of you. Make sure you like the stream, subscribe to the channel, and we are ready to get out of here. Drew, let them know where they can find you, brother.
Yeah, I'm over on the Twitter machine at Drew3MR, and then you can find myself and Chris on Fourth and Frames weekly on the Fantasy and Frames YouTube channel every single Wednesday night.
Jay, let them know where they can find you, man.
They won't find me anywhere on the screen. That's where I'm Mocking After Dark, which I will do every once in a while. I always try to get the crew together to do that. But you can find me at FantasyJ77 over there on that Bluebird app. I love getting to do these mocks, chatting with these guys. So much fun. Thank you again for joining. Everybody that was in the mock, everybody that was in the chat. I appreciate every single one of you for doing that.
You got that sweet gear, Gator. You got to get in front of the camera more, man.
It looks good.
Nate,
it feels good too.
It looks good. Good.
Listen, Dynasty Outhouse, he absolutely said this afternoon, he's like, it is so light and airy. It absolutely is. It is truly light and airy. I feel the wind blowing. It's summertime. It's got fishbowl. It's ready to go, baby.
Nate, let them know where they can find you, brother.
I'm not pimping merchandise like Gator, but I will pimp information if you want it over at Nate Markham. Shoot the Gap, Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Central. See how I did that? I didn't do Eastern, all that bullshit Eastern talk. We say Central on these streets.
God's time zone.
Yeah, exactly.
I just would love that.
Yeah, it's all right. And of course, I jump on with these guys on Fourth and Frames anytime, whenever I have an opportunity, because iron sharpens iron. So appreciate y'all.
Yes, sir. And I'm Chris Battislow. You can find me at FFChrisB. That's it for Mocking After Dark. We'll see you next time. Doodles.
Yeah.